It's time to break down the latest chapter of JoJo Part 9, the JoJoLands, where today we have Chapter 35, Usagi, Fraud and Suspicion, Part 3. This month, we continue the stand fight within the zoo, see a ton of new animals, fight some crocodiles, and begin to understand the truth behind our enemy, both their intentions and stand power, which has quite a few callbacks to JoJo's original universe. So like Paco in a pit full of crocodiles, let's just jump right into it. Starting with the cover page, we have an Usagi and Mate Kudasai action pose, which might be the first of its kind. I can't ever recall an Usagi cover page before, which makes sense because this is the Usagi arc. And nearing the top of the page, what the hell is going on with this stand's feet? They look like huge rabbit feet, which is not how this stand always looks. So this could be a redesign of some kind, or just some imagery of later events within this arc. Because we are at a zoo, so I could imagine Usagi using the Mate Kudasai to duplicate an animal at some point, although that does not happen within this chapter. Turning the page, we are welcomed in with a double page spread, the first of many within this chapter, and while I don't always call out the sheer quality of Araki's drawings as it's become so normalized, this chapter specifically has an incredible use of perspective and detail on the animals, which gives another level of realism to the world. So as we continue the review, I just want to draw your attention to how well of a job this setting is depicted. So we pick things up right where we left off last month, with Usagi being flung into the crocodile pit by the enemy stand. And since this is the first arc of JoJo to take place in a zoo, and we're going to see a bunch of animals drawn by Araki, I think this is the perfect opportunity to incorporate more animal facts into the chapter reviews, starting with giraffes. Did you know the giraffe is the tallest land mammal on Earth, standing upwards of 19 feet tall, but despite their size can still sprint in short distances at speeds of 35 miles per hour. And because they're so big, it looks like they're moving in slow motion. Also on this first page, we can see the crocodiles begin to swarm Usagi. So how do you tell the difference between a crocodile and an alligator? Easy differences to spot are their teeth and head shape. The crocodile has more predominant bottom teeth, which are visible when the mouth is closed, creating this funny grin, and have V-shaped mouths, when compared to alligators, which have an overbite and fatter U-shaped mouths. So by looking at Araki's drawings, we are fighting crocodiles, despite JoJo later referring to them as alligators. So almost immediately, Paco bravely jumps into this pit and pulls Usagi above water, giving off some action hero aura. And it's moments like this why Paco is a fan favorite of Part 9. He's such a bold and masculine presence who's willing to put himself in danger for others, and it reminds me a lot of how Jotaro would act in fights, often disregarding his personal safety. So Usagi tries his best to explain what's happening in the heat of the moment, proclaiming that it was Max from the house who attacked him. Although before we can really take time to assess further, the crocs begin to swarm, and Paco literally just starts fist fighting them, throwing elbows through their teeth, just tossing them around, which buys us enough time for JoJo to get involved and uses the elevation to their advantage and summons November Rain to push the crocs down into the water. Although by accident, or maybe some enemy intervention, some of the bystanders also fall into the pit, who Paco feels obligated to help, and this mother, I assume, pushes her own son out of the way to reach safety first, but is attacked and dragged underwater by a croc, karma I suppose. So instead Paco grabs the kid and we begin our ascent out of the pit, with Paco using the hustle to scale the wall with his back muscles. But before we make it out, we see another attack from the enemy stand, which targets Paco this time and plays out nearly the same as Usagi's first encounter. First, the stand possesses someone behind their target and uses personal information to exploit feelings of guilt and anger, baiting them into turning around. This time using Paco's backstory, saying his dad worked his ass off to immigrate from Venezuela but ended up in jail. Although in Paco's previous flashback, it was stated his father immigrated from Mexico, so this is either a discrepancy or the family went from Venezuela to Mexico, then to the US. But their mother had apparently abandoned them, and the stand projects this fear onto Paco, saying he's just like his mother and will abandon others when it gets too hard. And when Paco turns around, the voice transforms into the corpse of someone who had recently died, being this woman, and makes sexual comments about their mother. Seems to be this guy's thing. So it's the action of turning around and acknowledging the stand that gives it the okay to attack, and it bites Paco in the jugular. Thanks Araki, that's gore on my comfort character. And in a panic, Paco ends up elbowing the kid off of him, sending him back down into the pit, which he feels really guilty about, but we are dragged up by Jody and Dragona with smooth operators, able to quickly stitch up the wound, although it's just a temporary fix. So now that we're able to take this beat, Usagi thinks that this attack is some sort of evil spirit, a judge from hell that knows people's deepest secrets. But of course, it's probably a stand, and I think we have a pretty solid idea of how it functions now. First, in order to activate, it must have a corpse to possess, similar to Limp Bizkit, We saw it possess Max and now this lady, and in both cases their deaths looked like a suicide or accident, but I bet it was the stand user who framed Max's suicide and pushed these two into the pit. As it seems, the target must get physically close to the corpse it possesses. Then the stand will possess a living person nearby, do its cheap trick style manipulation, and once the target turns around, the ghost is the one that does the attack. The simplest stands in JoJo, be like. But as for how the stand is able to read people's past, it could just be a part of its power, or the voice we are hearing is from the stand user, who, if they are this cyber criminal, it's not unreasonable to think that they're able to find information about their targets online and extrapolate the basic facts into being manipulative and cruel assumptions. But speaking of facts, we have more animals. These look to be jaguars, which are the third largest cat on the planet, just behind tigers and lions, and have the strongest bite of all the big cats. These are flamingos whose legs awkwardly bend backwards, but did you know the joint responsible for this movement isn't their knee, but rather their ankle? Their knee is actually much closer to their bodies and functions normally. The chapter then flows back into this arc's narrative structure of splicing the conversation with Rohan in between the action, where we are trying to get Rohan to tell us the location of more lava rocks, which actually brings up a plot point I theorized in the last review, saying that either Howler or the cyber scammer could be listening to this phone call, and if Rohan just reveals the location flat out, it could work against us. And Rohan actually suspects this and plays dumb, but leaves JoJo a secret message. The message he suspects being the words, "I believe from my heart that you are my #1 fan." So what I think this means is that Rohan is actually going to draw the location of the lava rocks, or a clue to them in the next chapter of his manga, and JoJo will have to read Pink Dark Boy to find the answer. A secret message printed in a public manga seems like a pretty easy and anonymous way to communicate, and looking at Rohan's dialogue, it seems kinda obvious. He mentions that he has a deadline coming up, hinting that something's gonna be coming out soon, and what does a #1 fan do? They read Rohan's manga and could understand his messages in writing more so than anyone else. So I wonder if after this arc we'll wait for the manga to come out, and then the story will have us actually going to Hualalai, hopefully meeting back up with Charming Man, or the message means something totally different. But continuing on in the chapter, we have zebras. Did you know that a herd of zebra is called a dazzle? Because when together, their stripes create a motion dazzle effect, which confuses predators and makes it difficult to isolate a single zebra. In fact, this is so effective, during World War I, the British Navy developed a dazzle camo for their boats, making it difficult for torpedoes to read their speed and direction, which worked incredibly well. It was essentially humans copying zebras. So don't worry guys, if you didn't like the animal facts, that was the last one. So in the final pages of the chapter now, we have some time for our game to suss out this ability and pick up on all the clues and piece together the mystery. We also get a mention of Howler, now that we understand the enemy is most likely after lava rocks, and we think that this person could be a totally new party separate from Howler that has also been after them for a long time. So some good world building opening up the possibility of more antagonists. And that brings us to the final page of the chapter, where we see the face of our enemy stand, which appears as a sticker attached to the bottom of Usagi's shoe, with the words Kalakaua Avenue, which is a popular tourist center in Honolulu. So stickers, Max, invisible zombies, and crocodiles. This is definitely a reimagining of A Kiss of Love and Revenge from Stone Ocean. And this name, Kalakaua Avenue, could be referencing the location or an obscure song of the same name. So thank you all so much for checking out another JoJoLands chapter review. Please drop a like if you enjoyed, and of course let me know any theories you might have about this current arc or what Rohan's secret message could be. I'll talk to y'all real soon in a new video.